Tonight, we're going to focus on toxins and how those can affect the body. We have a very special guest, Dr. Kidde, who's going to be joining us to talk about his demonstrated history of working in the health and wellness industry. Whether you're looking to enhance your physical health, nurture your mental resilience, or simply find a moment of peace in your day, you're in the right place. Let's embark on this journey together, embracing all the possibilities that wellness has to offer. Dr. Drew has been an experienced integrative and functional medicine consultant, and he's demonstrated a history working in the health and wellness industry, and he's worked in the healthcare industry for over 20 years in both a clinical capacity as well as practicing physician, and has really been spending the last 6 years in a sales and consulting role with an industry-leading professional nutraceutical manufacturer. Without further ado, welcome, Dr. Drew.
Thanks, Amanda.
How are you today?
Doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. I would love to hear a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, it's funny because I was on another recent podcast and they said, so how long have you been in this space? And I go, well, define this space because it really, I'm going on, it's hard to believe, nearly 4 decades. Hard to believe when I'm only 29, right?
Right.
Nearly 4 decades of health and wellness. And my career, started early in fitness and in personal training. Owned a very successful personal training business, early on, which morphed into really more sales and marketing until I got the itch, decided to further my education, went back, my traditional training. I'm a doctor of chiropractic, but I realized early on in chiropractic that as much as I loved, the principles of chiropractic, and their body is a healing, organism, that I felt like I was missing the mark with only chiropractic. And so I started practicing functional medicine and clinical nutrition. My wife is also a registered dietitian. So, it's the proverbial, we practice what we preach. Often kid around and say my daughters, right, they didn't stand a chance from birth, or they stood a really good chance because they're thriving 19 and 21-year-olds because of the habits and the routines that we put into place. But I practiced clinically for 16 years until I made the decision to move into sell my last practice, moved into more of a coaching and consulting role. Had worked with practitioners all around the country, all around the world for that matter, in helping them grow and scale their business, helping them even build nutraceutical supplement brands. And so the past 4 years now has been with a leading nutraceutical company that that you're familiar with, that you use in your clinical practice. And I like to say now I went from working day in and day out with patients to now I really am so blessed, so fortunate to be able to work with practitioners to help their patients. Right. So now, the scope is so much greater because when I was in practice early on, we didn't have the world of virtual businesses. And so, you saw everyone brick and mortar, but now we have no geographical, boundaries, and being able to connect with you, and therefore, sharing the message out to your audience. So absolutely love what we do. I really feel it's a calling, to help people and educate people on optimal health.
What a blessing. It's great to hear your passion and just wanting to help other people, right? Just feel so much better. And I think that's what, for me, stems with my why of why I do what I do every day, and just helping people in every way that we can, but making it easy for them, right, to follow. And I guess that leads me into my first question. With what you're doing, how do they know if they have some issues that we could tackle for them, or what's a process based on their symptoms to get started?
Yeah, I kiddingly say it's kind of like, one of the buzz topics that we oftentimes, and we'll probably touch on, or we're going to touch on right now, is, people talk about things like parasites. And I will commonly kiddingly say, oh, do you want to know if you have a parasite? There's a simple test, right? It doesn't require a lab or anything, super detailed and invasive. And that's take these 2 fingers on your right hand and apply them to your pulse on your left wrist. And if you have one, you probably have parasites. And that's kidding around, right? But the reality is we're all exposed to pathogenic burden, whether it's parasites, whether it's bacteria, viruses. And really what, I was excited to talk to you about today is toxins, right? I truly feel that regardless of the lifestyle that we live, I live that lifestyle. You and I talked, we geeked out on how we're both, longevity, anti-aging, biohacking people. We do our red light and our cold plunge and our sauna and all the things. We still live in a toxic world. So even though we may not put the toxins voluntarily into our body, right? We can eat organic. We can use clean, cleaning products and skincare products and all those things. You go outdoors, go out in the environment that are you breathing air outside? Are you exposed to air outside? I will oftentimes kiddingly say, just because your produce that you get is from an organic farm doesn't mean that it's not downwind from a conventional farm. And, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, they kind of know no borders, right? It's not like they go, oh, we're going to stop at this guy's farm because it's organic, right? What's in our air? What's in the air that we're breathing, the water that we're drinking, all of those things. I truly believe that our bodies are absolutely incredible organisms that have self-healing capacity, but that's given the right environment. That's removing what shouldn't be there and putting the right things into our bodies.
And it just makes me think, 100 years ago, we weren't dealing with these issues. How have we gotten to this point in our society and in our world?
That's a great point. Part of it, I also look at lifespan, right? I look at lifespan versus health span. And yes, we can look at people weren't necessarily exposed, or so we think, to the amount of toxic burden. People, unfortunately, they passed away earlier. So many people, we didn't know the root cause. We have better diagnostics than we had, then. But we're keeping, whether we look at it as good or bad, we're keeping people alive a lot longer. But that doesn't mean they're thriving longer, right? We do look at this difference between lifespan, the number of years that you have in your life, and health span, the number of healthy years, because we can keep people alive with pharmaceuticals and everything else for decades of their lives, but it doesn't mean they're thriving and they're living, optimally. My thing is, I want to live optimally. I want everyone within my reach to live optimally, and one day just check out, right?
Right.
Not to deal with a life of chronic illness. And now that's what we do with our standard medical approaches. We really treat chronic illness. We treat lifestyle diseases, whether it's cancer, diabetes, heart disease, all of those things. They're lifestyle diseases. So why don't we think that lifestyle can reverse them instead of thinking that it takes pharmaceuticals to reverse them?
It's really unfortunate. And I love the proactive approach, avoiding the sickness and avoiding the disease. How can we be proactive in getting to that point? Because we all want to live a vibrant, healthy life and just be active, right?
Yeah.
And not be restricted at the end of our road. I mean, we just want to avoid sedentary lifestyles, I guess, right?
Right.
Just to feel a lot better and be able to move around and enjoy the grandkids.
Right, exactly. I think I heard it best from a patient of mine years and years ago. He was an older gentleman. He had been highly successful, corporate executive from Midwest, had moved to Idaho in his retirement. And, I did like you typically do. I looked at the paperwork, the clipboard before I walked in, to see this new patient. And this older gentleman, it was in the summer, he pops up and, shakes my hand, and he's wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and really fit guy. And I took a second glance, and he was 84 years of age. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely amazing.
Wow.
And so the more we got talking, he was sharing with me his goals. Like, he didn't start running until he was 69 years of age. He met his current wife, second wife, while running a marathon. He was like, whoa, she's kind of cute. So he ran alongside her. They finished the marathon together. And I said, why do you do what you do? Why do you exercise the way you do? And all of that. And he goes, well, if I fall down, I want to be able to get back up. Simple. Right? Simple things, but people have the strength to be able to get back up if they fall down? Do they have the strength and lung capacity to climb a flight of stairs and things like that? So I said to him toward the end of exam and history and all that, I go, I get a sense that you're really hard on yourself. You're very type A. And he goes, oh, I am. And I said, well, you got to compare yourself with your peer group. And he paused for a second. He goes, hell, they're all dead. It's like, there's some truth to it. Thriving at 84, it was amazing. So, well, it's interesting because when you and I first connected, I told you, I'm a numbers guy. I'm a science guy, right? And I was sharing with you kind of my thought very often with things like this is, how did we get here? How did we get to the point, not how did we end up on this podcast, but how did we get to the point where one of the very prevalent things that we talk about now in health is detoxification? The very fact that we are talking, even though our liver is designed to properly detoxify, right, given the right, circumstances, why are we constantly looking at detoxifying? Why are we looking at having to upregulate our mitochondria, that are in every organ, gland, cell of the body, with the exception of our red blood cells? And it's because of the toxins that we're exposed to, right? The how did we get here is because of our toxic environment. And I love sometimes sharing some of the studies, right? Because again, I look at PubMed data. This is not hidden, right? The stuff that I share is from clinical research. And there was a recent study that came out, I think almost 2 years ago, talking about forever chemicals, right? And these forever chemicals are something that are categorized. They're called forever chemicals because we're realizing that they truly do last in our environment, in our water, in our bodies forever, unless we do something about them. And they've been around since the 1940s, and they were looked at from these per and polyfluoral, alkyl substances, PFOS and PFAS, that they're in things like nonstick cookware. They're in flame retardant and water resistant clothing, right? They're in water resistant and stain resistant carpet and furniture. They're in cosmetics, in, nail care, fingernail polish, stuff like that. They're in pharmaceuticals. And, one of the studies that came out, I think it was June of 22, said that these forever chemicals were found in our water supply and were toxic and harmful, even at levels that were not detectable. So that's scary, right? And so again, we thought that they were amazing substances, right? Amazing compounds in so many different industrial applications. But now there were three chemical companies. It was like DuPont and Chemours and Corteva, I think, that settled a $1 billion lawsuit because they had allowed them to get into our water supply. Mm-hmm. So what toxic impact? When we say they're harmful at levels that you can't even detect, and yet they obviously are what's detectable is harmful. The EPA even lowered the allowable standard in, our water supply, but that's an issue, right? Mm-hmm. It was back in 2012, the Department of Health and Human Services, they came out with a report that says there are 80,000 chemicals that are registered in the United States for use in everything from foods, prescription drugs, personal care products, lawn care products, industry, all of that. And we add approximately 2,000 new ones every single year. And an exact quote, I wrote it down. It says, we do not know the effects of many of these chemicals on our health.
It's devastating.
Yet they're allowed. I have a heart, partly because I have kids. And like you mentioned, someday I want to have grandchildren. I want to grow very old, not only to torture my daughters, but also to torment my grandchildren. And I look at the toxic effect on our kids. There was a study that came out in July of 2022, and they found Roundup, they found glyphosate in the urine of 87% of the children tested.
My goodness. So
you look at that and go, okay, Roundup, we know commonly sprayed on crops, on lawns, everything else. And I've talked to parents who have said, well, Dr. Drew, we don't use any of that. We eat all organic produce and organic meat. So we have none of that in our food. We don't use any of those chemicals on our lawn. And I'm like, that's great. That's in your control. But didn't you tell me that your son or daughter plays softball, baseball, football, soccer 5 times a week, and you're out on fields? They're going out during school recess and playing outside. You live on a golf course, one of the most toxic environments
Sure.
there is. And, but these, we know how harmful. We know glyphosate, what it does to our gut, to the good, healthy bacteria in our gut. What are we doing to children? Right? What are we doing to their gut health and their toxic burden? There was another one right before I did a talk back in the fall. A report came out, similar thing, with phthalates in children's urine. And it was, again, like 600 and some odd kids from the ages of 4 to 8. Now, if you don't know what phthalates are, they are put in topical things. They're put in sunscreens, lotions, skincare products that allow them to be spread right on your skin. And they, found these phthalates in incredible number of children. They're known endocrine disruptors, interacting with our normal hormone balance. So what are we going to see if we're seeing this in 4 to 8-year-old kids? What are we going to see in their reproductive health as, young women and young, men who want to start a family, and yet they're exposed to these toxins at such a young age? So it's scary, it's scary, but here's the beauty of it. I go, it's ignorant for us to dig our head in the sand and think that, there's nothing I can do about it, right? We have to be aware of what we're exposed to. But the beauty is we know there are solutions, right? There are things that we can do.
And where's a good place to get started, would you say? Are there symptoms to look for, or?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the symptoms can be vast, right? The symptoms can be, everything from digestive issues, because of how we are impacting the good, healthy bacterial flora in our gut. They can be skin issues, like unexplained issues, rashes, acne, things like that, because our skin is a detoxification organ. So we're going to push oftentimes toxins through the lowest barrier. And, it can be everything. It can be headaches. It can be hormonal disruptions. It's, the list of possible symptoms from toxic burden can be so broad. I mean, you see them, in your own practice. I saw them for years and years, and many of them I didn't early on. I kind of chased, like I did a lot of thyroid work, right? And we kind of chased thyroid hormones, but then I didn't stop and look at, well, where are thyroid hormones converted? They're converted in the liver. They're converted in the gut. Well, if we're burdening our liver, if we're burdening our gut with toxins, is our body actually even going to be able to convert hormones? Like, why is it we see more and more people, male and female, with low libido, infertility issues, very low hormones, men and women who have low testosterone levels? Why is that?
Right.
It's because of toxins. It's these endocrine disruptors, hormonal disruptors that are causing, massive dysregulation in hormones. So remove the barrier, right? The answer isn't always, I'm not against people using hormonal support at all, but start with removing potential burden. Find out what the body is doing naturally before just kind of chasing numbers. Because that's where people get frustrated, right? Oftentimes people are like, well, I'm on testosterone, I'm on thyroid hormone, I'm on estrogen, progesterone, and they're constantly ebbing and flowing because they're not looking at why in the first place. Look upstream at what the problem is instead of just trying to patch holes.
Just getting to the root issue, right, of really what's causing.
Yep.
Would you say someone who's maybe done their form of detox and not being successful with that, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw it early on. I did a lot of detox programs. Every single one of my patients did some form of detoxification, some form of cleaning up their liver, cleaning up their gut health. We use saunas for part of our detoxification as well to literally open up every one of the detox and drainage pathways. But sadly, so many people, when they say, well, I've done a detox, right? We get two audiences. The people that go, well, I did a detox and it didn't really help. I didn't really notice any change. And I go, well, tell me about the detox that you did. And they go, well, it was an apple cider, vinegar, lemon juice, maple syrup, cayenne pepper, detox. And I go, well, no, that's a cleanse. You probably noticed some bowel changes in that, didn't you? Oh, yeah. Well, I had horrible diarrhea. And first of all, I apologize, Amanda.
Yeah,
we talk
okay.
Openly about people's poop. If you're uncomfortable talking about your poop,
sorry.
Sorry.
It's important to look at, though. It's just really, you can see some traits, right?
Well, and first of all, I always tell people you're not going to detoxify unless you are having regular bowel movements. And when I say regular bowel movements, if you're not having 1 to 2 bowel movements per day, regular, formed, not diarrhea, not constipation, but good formed, your body isn't even ready to detoxify. And that's the second group of that. There's the cleanse, but then also the people that said, well, I did a detox and I got super sick, right? I felt lousy. They may have had what we refer to as Herxheimer reactions, right? Herx reactions, because your body isn't able to get rid of those toxins. Your body may be releasing them from the liver, but it's not actually able to get them out of the body. And what happens? Autotoxification. You're going to reabsorb those toxins if we can't bind them and get them out of the body. So oftentimes, when people do say that, I did a detox, I got sick, I go, your body wasn't ready to detox. So there's a proper way. Like most things in health and wellness, there's a right way and a wrong way. Guess what? Amanda, I want you to exercise 3 days a week. Well, you can hurt yourself exercising if you don't do it right, or you can do it the right way and get great outcomes. You can hurt yourself doing things if you don't follow the right path and you don't have the right support, as well. Because we would, early on, sometimes have patients calling our office day 2, day 3 into a detox and go, oh my gosh, are you trying to kill me? I feel terrible. I have flu-like, symptoms. And I'm like, well, that's change. That's good, right? If you wanted to stay the same, you wouldn't have come in to see us. They wouldn't be engaging with you, Amanda, as a practitioner. And so, change is good. And you can walk people through that process. Because guess what? Most often, we'd reconnect with them day 4, day 5, and they never felt better. I feel amazing. I have great energy. I'm sleeping. I'm pooping. I'm, all of this stuff. My joint pain is going away. I'm like, good. That's
great.
That's fantastic.
I can relate. I have a lot of metal buildup, and I feel like that's a very common theme, and a lot of people struggle.
Right.
But I had the same, like the fluish, symptoms. The first real detox that I did, it was miserable for 3 to 4 days.
Right.
But I knew I was on the right track because I'm like, my body's telling me, you need to get this out. And I'm willing to do what it takes to feel better, and just being patient, drinking a lot of fluids, right? And just taking my doctor's advice and knowing that I must be on the right track, because if my body's feeling like this, there must be a lot more to it.
Yeah, change, it's like I said, change is good. Back to the analogy of exercise. We don't expect to exercise how many people in your audience have started an exercise routine and not dealt with some level of soreness? That's your body changing. That's a good thing, right? So, if nothing changes, nothing changes, right? I wouldn't expect someone to go through at some point some level of detoxification and not go, not feeling great with that. And it depends on what you're dealing with. To your point, are you detoxifying from heavy metal exposure? Are you detoxing from environmental toxins? Again, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, things like glyphosate, things like atrazine. Are you detoxing from industrial chemicals, right? We do a lot of people with that work in different industries that they're exposed to chemicals. Auto body repair people, mechanics, diesel mechanics, people that work in ports where they may be exposed to things from industry, manufacturing, all of those. But, how about even things like mold and mycotoxins, right? They all are different toxins that need to be removed from the body. and supporting the body so it is designed to do what it needs to do.
And where do you recommend testing for these labs that may help see
Yeah.
the true results of our levels and where we're toxic?
I'm a big fan. I had a personal motto, test, don't guess, right? A lot of people use that phrase. I could do a fantastic history and examination and, know in my mind what I think symptomatically is going on with that patient. But I also like to objectively show the patient exactly what's going on, right? And then that way, the old adage, if we fail to plan, we plan to fail, right? What are we going to address? And whether it was detoxifying from mold and mycotoxins because they lived in a moldy home, or they worked in a moldy office, or maybe they work in a job that they're dealing with mold, right? A lot of construction workers, people that are doing remodel, flips, things like that. It always amazes me when I don't see him wearing a respirator. And I'm like, yeah, but you just pulled out moldy carpet from Betty's house that's been there since 1964, and those mold spores are now in the air. So I love doing any objective testing, right? I'm a big fan of just your standard CBC chem panel, because a lot of the simple things can tell us, like what your red blood cells, your white blood cells, platelet counts, iron levels, all of those things. But I really, really like looking at toxic burden testing. So big one that I love is from a company that I think you told me you're familiar with, and it's someone I've worked with for years, but a company called Vibrant Wellness, Vibrant America. They run by far one of the best tox burden panels that is those three big offenders. It's mold and mycotoxins, it's heavy metals, and it's environmental toxins. And I have no vested interest in that company whatsoever. I just love the report that you get from it. I love the simplicity of it. I love, they have by far, in my opinion, the best sensitivity and specificity of their actual testing. So it really picks up a lot of, fine details, on the test. And then they even run something, like an organic acid test that's, can be looking at like vitamin and mineral deficiencies and that type of thing, looking at detox pathways in our bodies. So I just love, I think there's power in testing. Testing never got a sick patient well, right? It's the protocol, it's the plan to do something with that testing, but it's a great starting point. So looking at things like that, I'm kind of mixed on stool testing to look at different pathogens, parasites, that type of thing. As we're commonly known as the parasite company. On a regular basis, I get text messages from practitioners around the world with pictures of what their patients are passing in their stool, in their bowel movements.
Even children, right?
And in children, absolutely. And that's why I caution, there are a couple of different types of stool testing for pathogens and parasites. You can do a visual examination where they actually take, a stool sample, they look at it under a microscope, and they're looking for either the eggs, the larva, or, the actual parasite. Or they can do it through like PCR testing, where they're looking at like the DNA associated, the proteins and everything associated with a parasite. They're not conclusive because we've had enough practitioners. And I mean, we now work with, I think our number of patients using, our products, and therefore a lot of, doing a lot of testing, somewhere almost 40,000 worldwide. And roughly 10,000 practitioners worldwide that use, our products in some form of testing. And many of them did stool testing for parasites and different pathogens, and they came back inconclusive, but they went down a protocol. They incorporated some, parasite cleansing, some, pathogens, and the people passed parasites. Now we can also, I like to caution, we can get caught in the weeds. Is what I see in my stool, is it really a parasite? Right? Because sometimes people will see this long, stringy, 3-foot long thing in the toilet. Can it be a parasite? Yes. Can it be biofilm? in our body being expelled? Can it be mucoid plaque from the digestive system? Absolutely. I personally say better out than in. Regardless of what it is, it's impacting your absorption of nutrients within your gut. It can be leaching, different nutrients from our digestive system. So, it's good to just start with fertile ground in the digestive system.
And what are some symptoms that if someone hasn't really heard about parasites, or they've heard about it, it's a buzzword, but what are some symptoms that they could look for?
Oh, it can, again, it's the symptoms with that can be so widespread. They can be everything from just, general, GI bloating, digestive changes like, unexplained constipation, diarrhea, kind of like almost your IBS type symptoms that, is what's the underlying cause of that irritable bowel. They can be things that we see on blood tests. They can be things like anemia and whatnot because of what parasites are exactly that. They're parasitic. They have a wonderful relationship with you as their host. So, they're living off of you, so they can impact a lot of things from an absorption standpoint. You can see other, symptoms that are like skin changes with parasites. You can see, bruxism, grinding of teeth is something that is, believe it or not, a symptom of parasites. But here's the thing, Amanda, not all parasites are solely in the digestive system. Parasites can move systemically. They can move into your lungs. You can, get different parasites like strongyloides, can be in the lungs. You can end up with parasites in sinus cavities. They can be in the skin and the tissues. They can be, so many different areas within the body. So it's not just, parasite stool.
Even in the brain, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and one of the things too that, very often we say you don't always have to lead with doing a parasite cleanse, right? You can deal with other toxins, that you're wanting to clear through a detox. But I always caution people, I go, if either the patient is not progressing the way they want to and they expect, or the practitioner is like, gosh, we're just not seeing the lasting results, or maybe they run follow-up lab testing and a lot of those markers changed, but some don't. It is known that parasites can harbor other toxins. Parasites can be sponges for heavy metals. They can be sponges for, environmental toxins. And why is that? Again, they want to live off of you. So they can absorb toxins to protect you from that toxic burden so that they have a living host. People oftentimes will even do a parasite cleanse. And I always caution them, I go, well, make sure you have something to bind what is being released by the parasite. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, they can harbor heavy metals. They can harbor environmental toxins. There was a study that I actually read a while back that said that parasites can absorb up to 200 times more toxins than the surrounding tissue that they are in, right? So if you think about that, if that parasite is a parasite that, like a liver fluke or something that's in your liver, that can be absorbing 200 times more toxins than what is in the liver itself, right?
It's just catastrophic to our body.
Right, exactly.
Let's just say we've done a good parasite cleanse if we need to. What can people do to avoid getting exposed, or just once they get better, just to help prevent, if you will?
Yeah, it's hard. That goes back to what do we do to, prevent exposure to toxins, period. Like I said, when they, and even the clinical reports that come out that say they're in the water we drink, the food we eat, the air we breathe. We can't live in a bubble. But what we can do is, one, we try to do as much as we can to get the majority, if not all, of that toxic burden that's currently in the body, out of the body. But then utilizing certain things, like I'm a big fan of binders, right? We have multiple different binders, again, for all of biotoxin binder that helps with things like mold and mycotoxins. It helps with candida, that type of thing. Binders for heavy metals and glyphosate, binders for environmental chemicals and even radioactive elements that can be from, certain industry and parts of the country, parts of the world. But, we oftentimes as a motto, with our company, kind of have a personal motto of a binder is almost like a modern day multivitamin. Not saying that it does the job of a multivitamin, but it's as important to take on a regular basis as a multivitamin. Because we know why should you be taking a multivitamin? Because our food supply is depleted of key vitamins, minerals, nutrients. Our soil is, well, don't take me wrong, it's not 100% depleted, but it's absolutely depleted of nutrients that used to be in the soil because we're over farming, over tilling, we're over, spraying with chemicals. So we are, impacting that diversity of not only, vitamins, minerals that are in the soil, but also microbial diversity. Our grandparents and great-grandparents used to go out, pull a carrot out of the garden, brush it off, and eat it.
Right.
So they got good soil-based probiotics that were supportive of gut health. But now people are like, oh, you just don't have that healthy soil. So as I said, a binder is something that you should include in your normal dietary, your supplement routine, because you can't. You walk outside, we're being impacted to some degree. And this is not like conspiracy theory at all, like, ooh, there are toxins in our environment. It's clinically proven. Now, in an ideal world, our beautiful little livers should have the ability to take a fat-soluble toxin, convert it into a water-soluble toxin, and then rid it from the body. But people are dealing with issues with their health of their liver. We don't have the nutrients necessary to help with those pathways in the liver. So we end up with toxin buildup.
Because our bodies, everything we put in it, our liver has to process, right? It's just working overtime. I like doing the intermittent fasting just sometimes to give my liver a break.
Yep.
Right? And then I find my body will naturally detox. I will say too, and I don't mean to be partial, but the binder from your company, I've seen by far, I've been using binders for quite some time, but the best results. Is there anything you can maybe help some listeners, the benefits of binders in general, but what makes your binder from your company stand?
So to that point, people say, what does a binder do? And I go, well, the name implies it all. It binds, right? It grabs onto, toxins to get them to eliminate from the body. But not all binders are the same, right? You can have great binders, things like activated charcoal. If you think about it, like in the case horribly, but of a drug or an alcohol overdose and someone goes to the emergency department, the ED, whatever, what do they typically do? They'll pump their stomach with activated charcoal because it acts like a sponge. Activated charcoal has all of these pores that, the toxins are able to get into that can then be eliminated from the body. The problem is they're exactly that. They're just sponges. There's also no kind of energy or life in those. Those are kind of like, you can almost use the analogy of you have a fire in your fireplace or in a fire pit, barbecue, whatever, and it's that charcoal that's left over. Well, you can't light that charcoal back on fire and light another fire, can you? No, the energy is gone, if you will. Well, binders that we use substances that are from the earth. They're what are called humic and fulvic acids. Those are the result of decades, millennia, centuries, if you will, who knows how long, of biological decomposition of organic matter, of plants, of insects, of animals, whatever, that leave these rich deposits of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that last time I check me on my science, Amanda, human body is about 96% carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So don't we want to use the very things that, our body is made of? I would hope so. So those fulvics and humics act as amazing binders. Humics are more effective in the gut, so they'll bind onto toxins within the digestive system. Fulvic acids are much smaller. People will throw around the word nano, right? Nano-sized, which is simply 10 to the minus ninth in size, microscopic. Those fulvic acids have the ability to move more systemically in the body. So they're able to go into our tissues. They're able to impact with our cells and actually detoxify at the cellular level that conventional binders like charcoal, like diatomaceous earth, like bentonite clay, things like that just don't have the ability to do simply because of size.
Is it true that metals can store in our brain and you want to use the correct binder to avoid that happening?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very fascinated by how the body works, right? But when you really understand how you can feel better, and I think so many don't know, they don't have a baseline maybe to compare it to. And you talked about maybe not starting with a parasite cleanse or detox. Do you have any recommendations? I mean, we see in our practice, we have some, jumpstart kit I love just to get started for getting the body ready.
I'm a huge, huge fan, right? I think it's really important to, before you go on any, regardless of your health journey, right? Regardless of whether you are seeing a practitioner like you for hormonal issues, digestive issues, sleep issues, weight issues, whatever it may be, I kiddingly ask the question. I go, so, Amanda, what percentage of your patients present with symptoms like lack of energy, brain fog, general fatigue, poor sleep cycles, poor digestion? Most practitioners and even most patients are sitting there going, that's me. That's either me or that's all of my patients. All of them can benefit from, one, upregulating mitochondria. And I think it's important we need to talk about mitochondria for a couple minutes.
I agree.
But opening up mitochondria or upregulating mitochondrial function and opening drainage pathways. Drainage before detoxification. Because again, detoxification is our liver. It's primarily the liver. But what about drainage pathways like our colon? I mentioned the importance of having 1 to 2 bowel movements a day. If you're not, you're probably not ready or you need additional bowel support while you're doing a detox. What about our lymphatic system? Our lymph fluid that flows through our entire body also is a detox, organ, if you will.
Oh, exactly.
Our kidneys, because one of the ways that there are 3 primary ways that we get toxins out of our body once it goes from that fat soluble to a water soluble toxin. It's through feces, through bowel movements, it's through urine, and it's through our bile, which bile is produced by the liver, released by our gallbladder. It grabs onto toxins, dumps it into the intestine to be released, again, through the stool. So those are the primary things, right? Our liver is that detox, but we have to support the drainage all the way to draining at the cellular level. And that's where the fulvic acids come in at helping with that, cellular detoxification. So Jumpstart Kit, you mentioned, it focuses on mitochondria and drainage to get your body for 30 days, that kickstart of getting your body ready for the next steps. But, I mentioned mitochondria. I'm kind of a mitochondrial geek.
I am as well.
Our mitochondria are responsible for everything. We learned, right? Many of your audience probably sitting there going, yeah, I kind of remember mitochondria, right? From whether it was a high school biology class, whether they did undergrad and took a science class, whether they may very well be a practitioner like you and me, and they went through their clinical training, even, medical school. It's like we all learned that mitochondria are, and I sometimes pause when I'm in person and I wait for people to go, the powerhouse of the cell, right? We all learned that they're these little kidney-shaped organelles that are responsible for producing energy in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, right? Our mitochondria are what take glucose, sugar, from our dietary intake, or what our body produces. It converts it into something called pyruvate, into something else called acetyl-CoA, and then ultimately this currency of energy called ATP. Not a single function of our body, as you and I are sitting here talking, is occurring right now without ATP. Mm-hmm. So we have to heal our mitochondria, because what I think is really important is, do you want to know where mitochondria produce energy? What part of the mitochondria? It's the cell membrane. The cell membrane of our mitochondria is susceptible to toxic burden. It is what is attacked from environmental toxins. It's attacked by infections, viruses, bacteria, pathogens, things like parasites, things like Lyme disease and the co-infections associated with Lyme disease. There's a little bit of Lyme disease in your part of the country, isn't there, Amanda?
Oh, just a little.
Would
you say?
So those people that are dealing with, any type of infection like that and toxic burden, we have to support the mitochondria. Because again, I mentioned I'm a geek when it comes to numbers, right? We estimate, I don't know who's been responsible for counting, but we estimate that there are roughly 35 to 40 trillion cells in the human body. But there are hundreds to millions of mitochondria in every single cell. Mm-hmm. So you do that math and you go, okay, 40 trillion, 35 trillion cells in the body, but then there are, let's just say hundreds. Carry the zero, right? Let alone trillion or millions. Well, the liver has an estimated 2,000 mitochondria per cell. Our heart has approximately 5,000 mitochondria per cell. Our brain, kind of shows the importance of our brain, has any roughly 10,000 mitochondria per cell. But areas like, there's an area of our brain called the substantia nigra. It's responsible for making some of our neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. Those are kind of important. Those are our happy, neurotransmitters, right? Mm-hmm. They're up to 2 million mitochondria per cell in that portion of the brain.
Wow.
So when we look at liver dysfunction, we look at heart disease, we look at brain disorders, cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all of those can be linked in some way, shape, or form to mitochondrial dysfunction.
And it's just amazing how the brain, sends a signal to everywhere in our body and, for it to work effectively. And we're just so bogged down. A lot of us too with stress, I think can play a huge component. Don't you feel like that affects the mitochondria as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's virtually nothing, we can look at like what are the things that are impacted by mitochondrial dysfunction, right? Obviously energy production, cellular energy production, but our thoughts, our brain, those 10,000 mitochondria per cell, enzymes in our body, right? For the hundreds and hundreds of enzymatic processes in our body. Detoxification requires mitochondria, right? Because it's mitochondria within the liver that are responsible for that detoxification. But there's a ton of talk about like regeneration, regenerative medicine, and how important it is to look at a process called autophagy, which autophagy is programmed cell death. Our cells are constantly turning over. Well, our mitochondria are also constantly turning over through a process called mitophagy. And so as they're turning over, we have to create new mitochondria. And those are responsible for all those physiological processes in our body. Mm-hmm. When we talked about hormones earlier, and that, we can't always just jump at, supplemental hormones. We got to see where the hormonal dysfunction is. Well, mitochondria are responsible for regulating and converting hormones, in the body. And a biggie is immune function. Both our innate natural immune function and our adaptive, right, as a result of being exposed to secondary, offenders. It's regulated by our mitochondria.
It's very important. And I just think the wellness treatments included, we have a compression chamber bodysuit and then the infrared sauna just lymphatically Because if you start detoxing, you need to kind of help, like you said, the kidneys and liver excrete all of
Right.
that. And so I just think as a whole, it's not just one thing, right? But it's really a game plan and just getting the recommendation, because it's not a one size fits all for everyone.
Yeah, and it's, it also, I think, unfortunately, both as consumers, because we've all been on the patient side of things, as both consumers, patients, clients, as well as practitioners, sometimes we can look at like systems and we go, okay, I'm going to just do this. The body doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
The body is all of these interconnected pathways that we have to give the support to all of them, right? We can't just say, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on liver detoxification. Well, yeah, we can give your body nutrients that help with detoxification. But again, if we're not giving the things that are necessary to upregulate the mitochondria in the liver, in the kidneys, in the lymphatics, then it's never going to, function optimally.
And that brings me to thinking of, daily supplements that, of course, I'm sure there's some that you recommend, but without uploading that mitochondria, it's virtually not helping.
Right.
Your body can't absorb as much of that, which is already a, reduced rate, right? So we talk about some daily supplements that you think are a non-negotiable.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I always like to say, and here I am, a VP of a supplement company, but supplements are exactly that. They're supplemental. They're supplemental to what you should be doing through your lifestyle, through your dietary habits, doing all the supportive things. Because sadly, I think we've come to this world of, well, I can just take a pill, right? I can just take this product that's going to help me get to this next point. But I'm going to continue to do all the things that got me to where I needed that supplement in the first place. The analogy I use is putting a humidifier and a dehumidifier in the same room and turning them both on.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ever going to get a net gain? No, you have to find out why. Like if you're in that room and it's too humid, well, turn the dehumidifier on, turn the dehumidifier off, right? Mm-hmm. So
right.
Supplements the same exact thing. Start with nutrition, start with lifestyle. But am I absolutely a firm believer that yes, in addition to, because of our dietary intake, we need to be supporting certain nutrients, good multivitamin and mineral, B complex, getting B vitamins because we're depleted of B vitamins right nowadays. Getting magnesium. Magnesium is necessary for over 300 to 400 physiological processes in the body, and yet we're grossly deficient in magnesium. I've seen enough lab tests to quantify 100% that we are deficient. Kind of like vitamin D, right? Vitamin D3. Here we are, you're part of the country, my part of the country. We're in the middle of a snowstorm as we speak. We don't get enough sunshine north of the equator. We have to supplement vitamin D foundationally, especially this time of the year to support, immune function, to support mood. There's a reason why, sadly, the Pacific Northwest has some of the highest rates of suicide because they see the least amount of sun. And it's sun exposure that if you're not taking it supplementally, it's sun exposure that helps your body convert a form of cholesterol into vitamin D. Right?
Which is so sad.
So yeah, really, really sad. Again, mitochondrial support. I mentioned the binders that we use, but all of our products use those extracts, those fulvic acids, and those fulvic acids donate what are called electrons, right? We probably in the same biology class that we learned about mitochondria, we learned about electrons. And electrons are necessary for starting and stopping physiological reactions in the body. Well, again, geeking out on numbers, one molecule of fulvic acid contains 14 tetratrillion electrons. That's a number 14 with 21 zeros. That's a big, big number. And so why is it so? Why do people say, oh my gosh, your products work? It's because they're working at that cellular level. We're giving the body, we're not forcing things to happen. We're giving the body what it needs to help physiological pathways and responses in the body. So the fulvic acids are, super important for those pathways. So supporting mitochondria, again, a non-negotiable in my world is a binder. You can start with just one of our entry level, like, our biotoxin binder is a great binder. Then if someone knows, if they have run labs and they know that they're dealing with more environmental toxins, right? They live, in an agricultural part of the country. They know they're exposed to glyphosate, so certain pesticides and herbicides. They might want to use one of our other binders like HMET that's for heavy metals and environmental toxins. So that's where you can, kind of help guide people in that direction with utilizing the best binder and the right binder for their specific needs. But if there's one that I think everyone can benefit from, it really is that biotoxin binder. It's just a fantastic starter, binder product. And I shared with you, I mean, we're getting ready to launch. We're only a couple of weeks away
Very
from
exciting.
launching.
That's right.
We got 6 new products that are coming out. And those are 6 new products that are in that supportive category. They are like a multivitamin and mineral with additional mitochondrial support. They're, B complex vitamins with some very, specific added cofactors and supportive ingredients. The B complex, the magnesium, vitamin D, but then we have a couple of unbelievable new products that are for mitochondrial support as well as detoxification support with something specific called glutathione. And glutathione is literally, it's sometimes referred to as the master antioxidant. It really is the reason why even other antioxidants like vitamin C and vitamin E and those are effective, in the body. As we age, our glutathione levels become depleted. And so we have to support those for proper detoxification. And we are releasing a product. It's going to be it's in a stick pack. It's a powdered, a flavored peach and mango that can be just added to water. And it is designed, I brought it to our team almost 2 years ago. It's designed from a Baylor University study that shows the best way to upregulate what's called endogenous internal production of glutathione is through these 2 specific building blocks called N-acetylcysteine, or the cysteine amino acid, and glycine. And so giving those are shown literally, I wish I could share with your audience some of the studies. Their research studies showed that they literally reversed nearly every single marker of aging. Mitochondrial dysfunction, oxidative stress, reactive oxygen species, like all these things that we traditionally look at as indicators of the aging process, cellular aging, and they reverse them.
So we can
that
stay
product
ageless, really.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's pretty incredible. I'm very excited to incorporate those into our practice. And I think it can help so many patients who struggle. Like the glutathione, it's a regular requirement for myself and for many out there.
And sadly, we know, like outside of, not every practitioner has the ability to do IV therapy of glutathione. But sadly, we know that oral glutathione is horribly metabolized. It just does not metabolize well through the gut to actually result in the increased levels of blood glutathione. This combination, this GlyNac, is giving the body the building blocks to produce glutathione. And we've added some other cofactors, to that formulation that are also shown to help with the, synthesis of glutathione in the body. So it's super, super exciting. Mitochondria, detoxification, they're the key, the hallmarks, to aging, and slowing that aging process. There's a reason why we talk about inflammaging, right? It's the inflammatory processes that cause us to age prematurely.
And it's so nice if we can help as many people as possible, right? And there's so many things that we can now do. And I think there's so much research still being done, right? It's changed over the last 30 years. I mean, it's just, there's always continually, we're going to be evolving, right? But the evidence of looking at the statistics too is what's really speaks highly, right? And working with the company that has the highest level of efficacy that we've worked with is very inspiring.
Well, I mean, we're always honored. I always tell, you've watched some of the lectures that I've done, and I always love to say that our educated practitioners like you have educated patients, have educated clients, an educated following like your audience here. And those people get great clinical results, right? So I love to educate. If you can't tell, kind of passionate about education. But we're so thankful that we have people like you as a conduit, right, to share the science, to share this information, to get the message out there, and really to just impact the health of our world, right? We have an uphill battle, but it starts with all of us. We can sit back and go, woe is me, or we can go, no, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do something about it, right?
I think it's really important to, like you said, the education piece. And we're so happy to spend the time, because if patients don't understand or know the benefits or why we're doing this, it can be overwhelming, but you can take baby steps, right? We can educate them as they're ready. Yeah. But it's amazing. I mean, the level of care is just so different when you're following through with them as well. And just, we're checking in to see, the results, and we're monitoring everything as far as how are they feeling. And when they feel, the slightest change, it's exciting. It's so exciting to see someone's just mood change, or just they're at a happier level and they didn't realize how much better they can feel. And that's what's very inspirational. It's very gratifying.
Right. It's the little wins with the patients, but it's those little wins for us as practitioners, right? Seeing the impact that we can have on people's lives. And it's also the trickle down effect, because they want to share their experience with their peers, with their family. That's where this just becomes just all encompassing. I'm hoping we're on the precipice of change, right? Like you and I chatted about last week, I'm not about to get political in any way, and it's not about party lines, but like, if we can't look at something like the MAHA movement and making America healthy again and making our world healthy again, then we're missing something. I mean, we have no future if we don't have our health. I mean, how can we pour into our families and pour into our friends, our loved ones, our coworkers, if we're not healthy? We need to selfishly go, what am I going to do to be that? Maybe it's the chain breaker, right? Because how often do you see people who I have a family history of this. Well, you can be the chain breaker, right?
Exactly.
Guess what? I have a family history personally of obesity.
Look at you.
I made a decision. I made a decision to follow a different path. Heart disease, cancers, all of that. Now, with that said, we could go into a whole other, hour about epigenetics and genetics and all of that. But what do you do if you have a genetic marker for something? What do you do to prevent it from being expressed? It's a lock and key, right? Your genes are the lock. Your lifestyle is the key. Get a new key.
Exactly.
Get a new key.
Well, and it starts with the mind, don't you think? It can be one little step. And if it's one little thing that you can incorporate daily, it's a small step in the right direction. And it could be life-changing. We've all been there. We're all we're dealing with the same issues. So we're all in this together. So we're here to help, right?
Yeah.
And
well, I think, kind of probably a closing statement, because to your point, the power of the mind. And I don't know who it was that said it, but he who has health has hope, and he who has hope has everything. So one of the greatest things that we can do is be hope dealers, right? Give people a vision and hope that there is change on the other side of this challenge, this struggle that they're going through.
Mm-hmm. That's what we're here for. And we're the vessel. We're really here to help using our gifts, right? That we're blessed in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I am very honored to have you join us today as a guest speaker.
Yeah, thanks. It was a pleasure.
We look forward to working more together. And until our next episode, thanks so much for joining today. Wellness is a daily destination. We are here to support you every step of the way. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to hear all future episodes. Thank you for being a part of our community and for tuning in today.